Let's get right into it. Number 7, the branch Davidians. This is the story that turned Waco, Texas into a household name for all the wrong reasons. The Branch Davidians were an apocalyptic Christian group led by David Koresh. Koresh wasn't your average preacher. He claimed to be a prophet appointed by God and had a serious obsession with rock music and firearms. The group lived in a massive compound called Mount Carmel Center, where they spent their time studying scripture and stockpiling enough illegal weapons to start a small war. The federal government eventually took notice of the arsenal. On February 28, 1993, the ATF tried to raid the compound, leading to a massive gunfight that killed 4 agents and 6 cult members. Instead of surrendering, Koresh locked the doors and a 51-day standoff began. It was like a slow-motion car crash that the entire world watched on live TV. The FBI played loud music and shone spotlights at the compound to annoy them out, but Koresh just played his guitar over the loudspeakers. Finally, the FBI decided to end it by firing tear gas into the building. But instead of running out, the compound erupted in flames. To this day, people argue about who started the fire, but the result was horrific. 76 people, including Koresh and many children, died in the blaze. It was a catastrophic end that showed what happens when a government siege meets a doomsday prophecy head-on. Number 6. Aum Shinrikyo. Usually, cults attract people who are down on their luck, but Aum Shinrikyo was different. Founded in 1987 by Chizuo Matsumoto, this Japanese cult managed to recruit the best and brightest scientists, doctors, and engineers. Matsumoto claimed to be an enlightened Christ figure who could levitate. You would think a scientist would ask for a demonstration of the flying, but apparently tens of thousands of people just took his word for it. The group's goal wasn't just to survive the apocalypse, they wanted to start one. They believed that if they triggered a massive disaster, the cult would emerge from the rubble to rule the world. It's like a plot from a Saturday morning cartoon, but way darker. On March 20th, 1995, they launched a coordinated attack on the Tokyo subway system using sarin gas, a deadly nerve agent. They packed the gas into plastic bags wrapped in newspaper and poked them with umbrella tips during rush hour. The attack killed 13 people and injured over 6,000, turning a morning commute into a war zone. It remains one of the most terrifying domestic terror attacks in history because it happened in such a mundane place. The police eventually raided their compound and found they were trying to build everything from biological weapons to laser guns. The leader and 6 others were executed in 2018, proving that claiming to be a god doesn't actually make you bulletproof against the justice system. Number 5. Heaven's Gate. If you grew up in the 90s, you remember the matching tracksuits and the Nikes. Heaven's Gate was an American UFO cult started in the 70s by Marshall Applewhite and Bonnie Nettles. They convinced their followers that they weren't actually humans, but alien spirits trapped in human vehicles. They claimed to be the 2 witnesses from the Book of Revelation, which is quite the power couple status. To graduate to the next level and transform into immortal extraterrestrials, members had to completely reject their human nature. And when they said reject, they meant it. Male members were required to undergo castration to remove earthly desires. That seems like a pretty high entry fee just to join a club that prohibits fun. After Nettles died, Applewhite tweaked the story, saying a spaceship was trailing behind the Hale-Bopp Comet coming to pick them up. In March 1997, police entered a rented mansion in San Diego and found 39 bodies, including Applewhite. They had all committed ritual suicide to beam up to the spaceship. They were all dressed identically in black shirts, sweatpants, and brand new Nike Decades with purple shrouds over their upper bodies. It was eerily organized. They even carried exact change in their pockets for an interplanetary toll, just in case the aliens didn't accept Apple Pay. It's a tragic example of how a charismatic leader can convince people that death is just a business trip. Number 4. The Russian Doomsday Cult. Imagine believing the world is ending, so you decide to move into a freezing cold dirt hole in the ground. That is exactly what happened in November 2007 in Russia's Penza region. A self-proclaimed prophet named Pyotr Kuznetsov convinced about 35 of his followers that the apocalypse was scheduled for May 2008. He told them that to survive, they had to reject modern life entirely. That meant no processed food, no money, and absolutely no items with barcodes, because obviously a sticker on a bag of chips is the mark of the beast. So, these 35 people, including children, barricaded themselves inside a cave to wait for the end of the world. But here is the part that makes Piotr the employee of the month for worst cult leaders. He didn't join them. While his followers were shivering in a damp cave eating unbranded turnips, Piotr was chilling in his comfortable house. He claimed he had to stay behind to guide them from the outside, but police arrested him for allegedly selling off his followers' possessions while they were stuck underground. It's the ultimate scam. He basically evicted them into a hole so he could run a yard sale with their stuff. The standoff lasted for months. Eventually, the cave started collapsing because, surprisingly, amateur Doomsday excavations aren't up to code. 2 members died from toxic fumes in the enclosed space. The final survivors crawled out in May 2008, realized the world was still there, and Piotr was committed to a psychiatric ward. It turns out the only thing that ended was their patience. Number 3. Order of the Solar Temple. This cult sounds like a secret society from a Dan Brown novel, and honestly, they acted like one. The Order of the Solar Temple was a doomsday cult filled with wealthy, educated professionals. You'd think having money would stop you from joining a suicide pact, but apparently, boredom is a powerful drug. They believed that the world was going to end by fire, and that the only way to escape was to ascend to the star Sirius. To get to this other planet, they didn't build a rocket. They believed they had to die by fire. On October 4th, 1994, authorities in Switzerland found 48 bodies in 2 separate farmhouses. It was a scene straight out of a horror movie. The victims were dressed in ceremonial white cloaks and arranged in circles. Some had plastic bags over their heads, suggesting they didn't exactly sign up for the trip willingly. Investigators found that while some members committed suicide, others were shot or suffocated, meaning this was less of a departure and more of a mass murder. But they weren't done. The cult struck again in France in 1995 and Canada in 1997, leaving more bodies behind. It's terrifying to think that you could be a successful doctor or lawyer one day, and the next, you're wearing a robe in a burning barn, hoping to wake up on a star. Number 2. Movement for the restoration of the 10 Commandments of God. This Ugandan cult proves that the only thing more dangerous than a failed prophecy is a leader who owes people money. The group required strict adherence to the 10 Commandments, which sounds fine, until you learn that they interpreted "thou shalt not bear false witness" as "nobody talk ever." Many members communicated only using sign language to avoid sinning. It was probably the quietest cult in history, right up until the end. The leaders predicted the world would end on December 31st, 1999. Members sold their houses, gave all their money to the church, and waited. When New Year's Day 2000 rolled around and the sun still rose, things got awkward. The leaders quickly panicked and said, "Whoops, we meant March 17th, 2000. But the followers were angry, broke, and demanding refunds. Realizing they couldn't pay back the money they had likely spent or hidden, the leaders came up with a brutal exit strategy. On March 17th, they lured 530 followers into their church for a final celebration, boarded up the windows and doors, and set the building on fire. Everyone trapped inside died. Police later found almost 400 more bodies buried in mass graves around the property, meaning the leaders had been systematically poisoning people for months. The total death toll was over 900, and the 2 main leaders escaped and were never found. It remains one of the worst cult massacres ever. Number 1, the People's Temple, Jonestown. You've heard the phrase, "don't drink the Kool-Aid." This is where it comes from, and the reality is way darker than the saying implies. Jim Jones started the People's Temple in the 1950s as a socialist movement that preached racial equality. It sounded great on paper, but Jones was a master manipulator who demanded total control. He eventually moved the whole group to a remote jungle settlement in Guyana called Jonestown to build a utopia. But Jonestown wasn't a paradise, it was a prison camp. Jones, drug-addled and paranoid, brainwashed his followers and made them call him father. In November 1978, US Congressman Leo Ryan flew down to investigate claims that people were being held against their will. He tried to help some members leave, but Jones's guards ambushed them at the airstrip and assassinated the congressman. Knowing the US military would be coming for him, Jones initiated his revolutionary suicide. He ordered his followers to drink a grape-flavored drink laced with cyanide. It wasn't actually Kool-Aid, it was a cheaper knockoff brand called Flavor-Aid, because Jones was cheap even when it came to the apocalypse. Over 900 people died that day, including hundreds of children. Audio recordings of the event reveal that many didn't want to do it. They were forced by armed guards. It wasn't just a suicide, it was a mass murder that wiped out an entire town in a single afternoon. That's it for today's deep dive into the darker side of belief.